Money is not just about numbers, strategies, or even luck. It's about psychology. In his influential book, The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel reminds us that financial success is less about what you know and more about how you behave. Emotions, habits, and the way we perceive risk and reward often matter far more than technical knowledge or market predictions. This book explores the hidden forces that shape our financial decisions: fear, greed, patience, and even overconfidence. It reveals why two people with the same resources can end up with entirely different financial outcomes simply because of the way they think about money. In this summary, we'll uncover Housel's timeless lessons about wealth, happiness, and financial wisdom. We'll learn why saving is more powerful than earning, why independence is the true measure of wealth, and why controlling our behavior is the single most important skill in managing money. So if you're ready to discover how psychology shapes your financial destiny, stay tuned as we dive deep into the psychology of money. And don't forget, if you enjoy thoughtful summaries of life-changing books, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who want to master both money and mindset.
Chapter 1. No One's Crazy. Morgan Housel begins The Psychology of Money with a striking idea. When it comes to money, no one is truly crazy. At first, this might sound surprising, especially when we look at the financial mistakes people make: overspending, risky investments, or panicking during market crashes. But Housel emphasizes that what may look irrational to one person is often perfectly reasonable to another, because everyone sees money through the lens of their own experiences. Consider two people. One who grew up during the Great Depression, and another who lived through years of economic growth and abundance. The first might see money as something fragile, to be protected and saved at all costs. The second might see it as a tool for opportunity, risk-taking, and growth. Both are shaped by their personal histories, and neither is truly irrational. This is what Housel means when he says, "No one's crazy." Our financial decisions are not always guided by cold logic or mathematical calculations. Instead, they are rooted in emotions, memories, and the stories we tell ourselves. The stock market crash of 2008 left a permanent scar on millions of investors. Some became overly cautious, while others saw it as an opportunity to buy at low prices. Both reactions are logical within the framework of personal experience. The key lesson here is empathy. If we understand that people's financial behaviors are shaped by what they have lived through, not by abstract economic theories, we become less judgmental and more aware of our own biases. Just as importantly, we learn to question whether our financial choices are truly rational or simply the result of our unique life circumstances. In essence, Chapter 1 lays the foundation for the entire book. Money is not a one-size-fits-all subject. There is no single right way to behave with money, because what feels safe, risky, or logical depends entirely on the story of our lives.
Chapter 2. Luck and Risk. In this chapter, Morgan Housel dives into two powerful but often misunderstood forces that shape financial outcomes: luck and risk. He reminds us that success in money and in life is never solely about skill, intelligence, or effort. Sometimes it's about being in the right place at the right time, and at other times, it's about surviving misfortunes that were entirely beyond our control. Housel illustrates this idea through the story of Bill Gates. Gates attended one of the few high schools in America that had access to a computer in the 1960s. This extraordinary stroke of luck gave him a head start that would later contribute to the creation of Microsoft. Was Gates brilliant? Absolutely.
But brilliance alone isn't enough. He also benefited from being born at the right time in the right place with the right opportunities. On the other hand, there are countless equally brilliant individuals who never had the same chance. A small twist of fate, a missed opportunity, an accident, or a global event can alter the course of someone's life forever. That's the power of risk. The lesson here is humility. When we succeed, we should acknowledge that luck often plays a role, even if it's invisible. And when others fail, we should not be too quick to judge, because risk may have struck them in ways they could never have predicted or controlled. Housel urges us to approach financial decisions with this dual awareness. Never assume success is purely the result of personal genius. Never assume failure is purely the result of stupidity or laziness. By respecting the roles of luck and risk, we cultivate gratitude for what we have and compassion for those who struggle. More importantly, we avoid arrogance in times of success and despair in times of failure. Ultimately, the key takeaway from Chapter 2 is this: outcomes are never as neat as we think. Behind every great fortune lies a blend of skill and fortune, just as behind every failure lies a mix of mistakes and bad luck. To navigate money wisely, we must balance confidence in our actions with humility about forces beyond our control.
Chapter 3. Never Enough. In this chapter, Morgan Housel explores one of the most dangerous traps in the psychology of money, the feeling of never having enough. No matter how much wealth some people accumulate, it is never quite satisfying. There's always someone richer, always a higher target, always another milestone to chase. Housel begins by telling the story of Rajat Gupta, a man who climbed from poverty in India to become the head of McKinsey & Company, one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the world. Gupta was already a multimillionaire, living a life of prestige and influence. Yet it wasn't enough. He became involved in insider trading, seeking even greater wealth, and was eventually caught and sentenced to prison. His downfall illustrates how the inability to recognize enough can destroy even the most successful life. The problem, Housel explains, is that enough is a moving target. When we reach one level of success, we often shift the goalposts higher. What once felt extraordinary soon becomes ordinary, and we crave more. This endless chase blinds us to the happiness that might be right in front of us. He contrasts this with the philosophy of Warren Buffett, who, despite his immense fortune, is known for living a relatively modest lifestyle and finding contentment in simplicity. Buffett's attitude demonstrates the wisdom of recognizing when you already have enough. The lesson here is profound. Wealth is not only about accumulation, it's about contentment. If we cannot define what enough means for us, we will forever live in a state of dissatisfaction, regardless of how much we earn or save. Housel suggests that the greatest financial skill is not maximizing returns, but knowing when to stop chasing, when to appreciate stability, and when to prioritize peace of mind over endless ambition. True wealth lies not in constantly reaching for more, but in knowing when we already have enough.
Chapter 4. Confounding Compounding. In this chapter, Morgan Housel turns to one of the most powerful yet misunderstood forces in finance: compound interest. At first glance, compounding seems simple. It's just earning interest on your interest. But Housel argues that the real magic of compounding is not in its mechanics, but in its time horizon. It is astonishingly powerful, yet deeply underappreciated, because humans struggle to grasp exponential growth. To illustrate this, Housel points to the story of Warren Buffett.
Many people look at Buffett's wealth and assume it's the product of extraordinary investing genius. While Buffett is indeed a brilliant investor, the key to his fortune lies in the fact that he started investing as a child and never stopped. By the time he reached his 60s, his wealth had already compounded into billions. Today, over 90% of Buffett's net worth came after his 65th birthday. This reveals the essence of compounding. Its true power is unlocked not by chasing the highest returns, but by giving your money enough time to grow. Even small, steady returns can create unimaginable wealth if allowed to compound over decades. Housel also stresses the flip side. Impatience is the enemy of compounding. Many investors sabotage themselves by constantly switching strategies, chasing short-term gains, or panicking during downturns. Each interruption resets the compounding process, destroying its long-term benefits. The broader lesson extends beyond money. Compounding applies to knowledge, relationships, habits, and health. Small, consistent actions accumulate into profound results over time. Just as a tiny snowball grows into an avalanche as it rolls downhill, our seemingly minor daily choices shape the trajectory of our lives. In essence, Chapter 4 teaches us that the greatest financial growth doesn't come from brilliance or complexity, but from patience. Compounding rewards consistency and punishes impulsivity. It is not about getting rich fast. It's about staying invested long enough to let time work its quiet, invisible magic.
Chapter 5. Getting Wealthy versus Staying Wealthy. In this chapter, Morgan Housel makes an important distinction. The skills required to get rich are not the same as the skills required to stay rich. Many people manage to accumulate wealth, but far fewer manage to hold on to it over the long run. Why? Because getting wealthy often depends on risk-taking, boldness, and optimism, while staying wealthy depends on humility, caution, and fear of loss. Housel explains that wealth preservation requires a mindset of survival. To stay rich, one must avoid catastrophic mistakes, resist overconfidence, and focus on consistency rather than dramatic wins. He puts it simply, getting money is one thing, keeping it is another. A central theme of this chapter is reasonable greater than rational. You don't have to be a perfect hyper-rational investor who always chooses the mathematically optimal strategy. Instead, you need to be reasonable enough to protect yourself from ruin. This often means sacrificing the pursuit of maximum gains in favor of strategies that ensure longevity. Housel also emphasizes the importance of room for error, or what he calls a margin of safety. Markets are unpredictable, and unexpected events, pandemics, crashes, political shifts can wipe out fortunes built over decades. Those who stay wealthy are the ones who always prepare for the unknown, who accept that uncertainty is inevitable, and who plan for setbacks before they arrive. This chapter's takeaway is profound. Wealth isn't just about ambition, but it's about endurance. The winners in the financial game are not those who take the biggest risks, but those who manage to stay in the game long enough to allow compounding to work its magic. In short, it is not brilliance that ensures lasting wealth, it is survival. Chapter 6. Tails, You Win. In this chapter, Morgan Housel introduces the idea that in finance and in life, a small number of events often account for the majority of outcomes. These rare extreme events, often called tail events in statistics, are the ones that shape history, fortunes, and markets far more than the ordinary day-to-day fluctuations. Think about the stock market. Most years, returns are modest, even boring. But every once in a while, there are extraordinary events, like the dot-com boom, the 2008 financial crisis, or the meteoric rise of companies such as Amazon or Apple. These rare moments account for an outsized portion of long-term gains or losses. Housel argues that this reality should shape how we think about investing and decision-making. We don't need to predict every move the market makes. We need to prepare for the possibility of rare transformative events. A single investment can fail, but one extraordinary success can make up for dozens of failures. He illustrates this by pointing out how venture capital firms operate. They know most of their investments will flop, but they also know that one or two big winners can return the entire fund and more. The key is to accept failure as part of the process while remaining exposed to the possibility of massive success. This principle applies to personal life as well. A handful of decisions, choosing a career, a partner, or an investment, can shape your destiny far more than the hundreds of minor choices you make daily. Recognizing the power of tails helps us stay humble, resilient, and open to opportunity. The ultimate lesson of Chapter 6 is this: you don't need to be right all the time. You just need to survive long enough for the rare, extraordinary events to tilt the odds in your favor. Wealth and success are not about perfection. They're about letting the big wins outweigh the inevitable mistakes.
Chapter 7. Freedom. In this chapter, Morgan Housel argues that the highest form of wealth is freedom, the ability to wake up in the morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. While money can buy luxury, comfort, or status, its most valuable gift is control over your time and your life. Housel explains that many people chase wealth thinking it will bring happiness, but what they really crave is independence. Having control over when you work, where you live, and how you spend your days provides a deeper and more lasting sense of satisfaction than any material possession ever could. He draws on examples of people who, despite enormous financial success, remain trapped in schedules, obligations, and lifestyles they secretly resent. By contrast, those with modest means but full autonomy often report higher levels of contentment. The lesson is clear. Money is a tool, not an end in itself. It should be used to create choices, flexibility, and peace of mind. Wealth without freedom can feel like a prison. Wealth with freedom becomes true prosperity. Housel also stresses that freedom does not require unimaginable riches. Even small amounts of financial security, like savings that cover a few months of expenses, can give people the power to make choices that align with their values rather than their fears. The takeaway from Chapter 7 is simple yet profound. Money's greatest return is not a bigger bank account, but the ability to reclaim your time. The richest person is not the one with the most possessions, but the one who has the most control over how they live. Chapter 8. Man in the Car Paradox. In this chapter, Morgan Housel introduces a fascinating paradox about status and wealth. People often buy expensive things, luxury cars, designer clothes, lavish houses, not just for themselves, but to impress others. Yet, here's the paradox. No one admires the person in the car, they admire the car itself. When someone drives past us in a shiny new sports car, we don't think, wow, that person must be amazing. Instead, we think, wow, I'd love to have that car. In other words, attempts to display wealth rarely bring the admiration we seek. The attention goes to the object, not the owner. Housel uses this example to show how often we misunderstand what actually brings respect and admiration. True respect doesn't come from flashy displays of money. It comes from character, kindness,
wisdom, and authenticity. The more someone tries to buy status, the less likely they are to achieve genuine admiration. The paradox goes even deeper. Many people sacrifice financial security by overspending on luxury items in the hopes of gaining social approval. Instead of earning respect, they lose freedom, stability, and peace of mind. The key lesson is that status purchased through money is an illusion. Real influence and respect cannot be bought. They must be earned by how we live and treat others. If we spend less time trying to impress strangers and more time building meaningful relationships and living authentically, we end up richer in the ways that truly matter. Housel concludes that the smartest use of money is not to broadcast wealth, but to quietly build independence and peace of mind. In the end, the admiration we seek can never come from possessions. It must come from who we are.
Chapter 9. Wealth is what you don't see. In this chapter, Morgan Housel delivers one of the book's most powerful insights. Wealth is invisible. What people usually see, the big house, the luxury car, the designer clothes, is not wealth. Those are expenditures. True wealth is hidden because it consists of the money that hasn't been spent, the savings, the investments, the assets quietly growing in the background. Housel explains that society often confuses being rich with being wealthy. Being rich means having a high income or flashy possessions. Being wealthy means having the financial freedom to make choices, to survive downturns, and to live life on your terms. A person driving a used car but quietly saving and investing could be far wealthier than the person in the Ferrari with no savings and mounting debt. This chapter highlights the danger of chasing visible symbols of success. When people spend heavily to project wealth, they are actually reducing their financial security. Meanwhile, those who live modestly but save consistently are building real wealth, the kind that provides independence and peace of mind. Housel urges us to rethink our definition of wealth. It is not about what we display to others, but about the quiet strength we build for ourselves. He writes that true wealth is like an iceberg. The part that matters most is the portion below the surface, unseen by the world. The takeaway is liberating. You don't need to prove your wealth to anyone. The most powerful financial decision you can make is to save and invest, even if no one else sees it. In fact, the less people notice your wealth, the more likely it is that you are building it wisely. Chapter 10. Save Money. In this chapter, Morgan Housel presents one of the simplest yet most overlooked truths about wealth. Saving money is more important than earning money. While high incomes and big returns can help, the real foundation of financial success is the ability to consistently save. Housel argues that many people overcomplicate wealth building by chasing higher salaries, complex investment strategies, or risky ventures. But the truth is, none of those matter if you don't save. Saving is the gap between your ego and your income. The ability to live below your means instead of constantly expanding your lifestyle. He emphasizes that saving doesn't require a six-figure salary. What matters is your behavior, not your paycheck. A teacher who lives modestly and saves diligently can end up wealthier than a high-earning executive who spends everything he makes. Another key point is that savings provide flexibility and freedom. They are not just a safety net, but a tool that allows you to make better choices.
With savings, you can walk away from a toxic job, take a risk on a new opportunity, or simply sleep better at night knowing you're secure. Housel also reminds us that saving is the one part of finance entirely under our control. We cannot predict the stock market, inflation, or global crises, but we can control how much we set aside. This makes saving the most reliable and powerful strategy for long-term wealth. The core lesson of Chapter 10 is clear. Wealth is not built on income, but on discipline. You don't need brilliance or perfect timing. You just need the habit of saving consistently, regardless of how modest the amount may be. Over time, those savings compound into the freedom and independence that define true wealth.
Chapter 11. Reasonable is greater than rational. In this chapter, Morgan Housel makes a bold claim that when it comes to money, it's often better to be reasonable than to be purely rational. While rationality is about following strict logic and mathematical models, reasonableness takes into account human behavior, emotions, and the realities of daily life. Housel explains that many financial experts obsess over maximizing returns, calculating probabilities, or optimizing every investment decision. But most people are not robots. We have families, fears, dreams, and biases. A strategy that is rational on paper might fail in practice because it's too hard to stick with during stressful times. For example, putting all your money in stocks may be mathematically optimal for long-term growth, but it's not emotionally sustainable for everyone. If a 40% market crash makes you panic and sell at the bottom, the rational strategy has failed you. A more reasonable approach, perhaps holding a mix of stocks, bonds, and cash, may not maximize returns, but it helps you stay invested through volatility. The lesson here is that personal finance is personal. The best plan is not the one that looks most efficient in theory, but the one you can live with in practice. Reasonableness ensures endurance, and endurance is the real key to building wealth. Housel also points out that history is full of investors, entrepreneurs, and savers who weren't always rational, but who succeeded because they were consistent, disciplined, and emotionally balanced. In money, survivability beats perfection. The key takeaway from Chapter 11 is liberating. You don't need to be a genius to succeed with money. You just need to create a financial strategy that's good enough to keep you in the game for the long run. Reasonable choices, repeated consistently, almost always outperform perfect strategies that collapse under real-world pressure.
Chapter 12. Surprise. In this chapter, Morgan Housel reminds us of a difficult truth. The future is full of surprises. No matter how carefully we plan, there will always be events that nobody predicted. Financial crises, technological revolutions, pandemics, wars. History, he argues, is not a smooth curve of progress, but a chaotic sequence of shocks and unexpected turns. Housel stresses that one of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming the future will look like the recent past. Investors often expect tomorrow's economy to behave like yesterday's, but the world changes in ways we cannot foresee. The 2008 financial crisis, the rise of the internet, or the global impact of COVID-19, all of these reshaped economies and lives in ways few imagined beforehand. The lesson is humility.
Instead of trying to predict every twist and turn, we should build financial plans that are resilient to surprises. This means keeping a margin of safety, diversifying investments, and avoiding overconfidence. It also means recognizing that volatility is not a bug in the system, it's the system itself. Housel also argues that surprises are not always negative. Many of the greatest fortunes and breakthroughs came from unexpected innovations: the personal computer, the smartphone, renewable energy. The unknown cuts both ways. It can destroy wealth, but it can also create it. The takeaway is that uncertainty is permanent and surprise is inevitable. The best approach to money, therefore, is not to chase perfect forecasts, but to remain flexible, cautious, and prepared. As Housel puts it, financial success often depends less on predicting the future and more on surviving whatever it throws at you.
Chapter 13. Room for Error. In this chapter, Morgan Housel introduces one of the most practical principles of financial success. Always leave yourself a margin of safety, or what he calls room for error. Life is unpredictable, markets are volatile, and mistakes are inevitable. The only way to ensure long-term survival is to build in buffers that protect you from the unexpected. Housel draws inspiration from engineering. Bridges, for example, are built to hold far more weight than they are expected to carry. This is not wasteful, it's essential. Without a margin of safety, even small surprises could lead to catastrophic failure. The same principle applies to money. In finance, room for error means saving more than you think you'll need, investing less aggressively than you're tempted to do, and never assuming that things will always go according to plan. It means recognizing that setbacks, job loss, illness, market crashes, inflation, are not unlikely events, but inevitable ones. He also emphasizes that having room for error reduces stress. People who live on the edge financially, with no cushion, are constantly vulnerable to panic and poor decisions. Those with savings, flexible plans, and modest expectations can face uncertainty with confidence and calm. The key lesson is this: you don't win by being right all the time. You win by not getting wiped out when you're wrong. Success is less about brilliance and more about endurance. By planning for errors and leaving space for the unknown, you dramatically increase your chances of long-term wealth and stability. In short, wealth is not built on perfection, it is built on resilience.
Chapter 14. You'll Change. In this chapter, Morgan Housel explores a truth we often overlook. We ourselves will change over time. Our goals, our desires, our fears, and even our definition of success. Yet, most financial plans are built as if who we are today will remain the same forever. Housel explains that people are surprisingly bad at predicting how much they will change in the future. Psychologists call this the end of history illusion, the belief that while we've changed a lot in the past, we won't change much going forward. In reality, change is constant. The career that excites you at 25 may feel like a burden at 45. The risks you're willing to take in your youth may terrify you later. This matters because money decisions are long-term by nature. Mortgages, retirement savings, investments, all are made decades before the payoff. If we assume our future selves will want exactly what we want now, we may trap ourselves in commitments that don't fit the lives we eventually live. Housel's advice is humility and flexibility. Instead of rigid plans, we should design financial strategies that can adapt as our goals evolve. Don't lock yourself into a lifestyle or debt that leaves no room to change course. Build wealth in ways that maximize options, because the freedom to pivot when your desires shift is one of the greatest gifts money can provide. The lesson here is simple but powerful. Financial planning is not just about predicting the future world, it's about predicting your future self. Since both are uncertain, the best strategy is to stay flexible, avoid extremes, and value options over commitments.
Chapter 15. Nothing's Free. In this chapter, Morgan Housel introduces the idea that everything in finance has a price. But the price is not always obvious. We often think of investing as something that should deliver steady, predictable rewards. But in reality, the returns of investing come with a hidden cost. Volatility, uncertainty, and the emotional stress of watching markets rise and fall. Housel argues that many people misunderstand this price. When the stock market crashes, investors panic and sell, believing that something has gone wrong. But in truth, market downturns are not a bug. They are the fee we pay for long-term growth. Just as a great education requires years of effort, or a strong body requires time in the gym, financial wealth requires enduring the discomfort of risk. The mistake most people make is wanting the rewards without paying the price. They want high returns without volatility, gains without patience, and wealth without sacrifice. But as Housel reminds us, there is no free lunch in finance. He compares it to buying a car. The price is clearly displayed on the sticker, and no one is surprised by it. But with investing, the price, emotional turbulence, uncertainty, and occasional losses, is hidden. This makes it harder for people to accept, and easier for them to abandon good strategies when the inevitable downturns arrive. The lesson of this chapter is straightforward. Every reward in finance has a cost, and the cost is worth paying. Instead of running from volatility, we should see it as the entrance fee to long-term wealth. Those who understand this are more likely to stay the course, while those who resist paying the price are more likely to quit before they see the results. In short, nothing in life or money is free. The key is not to avoid the cost, but to be willing and prepared to pay it. Chapter 16. You and Me. In this chapter, Morgan Housel dives into one of the most overlooked truths about money. What feels right for you may not make sense to someone else, and that's perfectly fine. Every financial decision is shaped by personal history, upbringing, culture, and even luck. A person who grew up during a financial crisis will view money differently from someone who experienced prosperity in their early years. To one person, saving every penny feels like security. To another, it feels like wasted opportunity. Some are comfortable with risk, while others cannot sleep at night knowing their investments might fluctuate. Housel warns against judging other people's financial choices without understanding their background. What seems irrational from the outside often makes perfect sense within the context of someone's lived experience. For example, a young professional might aggressively invest in risky assets, while an older worker might keep their wealth in cash. Both choices can be rational because they are aligned with the individual's needs, fears, and time horizons. This idea extends to personal goals as well. You might be aiming for financial independence by 40, while your friend dreams of building a business empire, and another person just wants stability and peace of mind. None of these goals are better than the others. They're just different. The deeper message here is humility. Recognize that there is no single right way to handle money.
Financial decisions are not one size fits all, and trying to force your perspective onto others or adopt theirs blindly can lead to frustration. Ultimately, Housel reminds us that money is deeply personal. What matters most is not what's objectively right or what looks impressive, but what genuinely works for you.
Chapter 17. The Seduction of Pessimism. Morgan Housel opens this chapter with an observation. Pessimism often sounds smarter than optimism. When someone warns of crisis, collapse, or failure, people tend to listen more closely than when someone predicts growth, recovery, or success. This is because pessimism feels cautious, realistic, and intellectually serious, while optimism can sound naive or careless. But here lies the paradox. While pessimism grabs attention, optimism tends to be the more accurate view of history. Human progress, economic, technological, and social, has been overwhelmingly positive over the long run. Markets rise more often than they fall. Economies expand more than they contract, and human ingenuity continually finds ways to overcome challenges. Housel explains why pessimism is so seductive. Losses hurt more than gains feel good, and negative news travels faster than positive news. A market crash, for example, is sudden and dramatic, while long-term growth is slow and almost invisible on a daily basis. This imbalance makes pessimism more memorable and persuasive, even if it is less true in the big picture. For investors, the danger is clear. If you are constantly drawn to pessimistic voices, you may miss out on the rewards of long-term optimism. Fear of the next downturn can keep you from participating in the broader upward trend. The key lesson is balance. We must acknowledge risks and prepare for setbacks, but without letting them paralyze us. History shows that progress is the default outcome, even if the road is rocky. By resisting the emotional pull of pessimism, we can remain invested in the future and reap the benefits that optimism, backed by resilience and patience, delivers.
Chapter 18. When You'll Believe Anything. In this final chapter, Morgan Housel explores how, in moments of uncertainty or crisis, people become vulnerable to believing almost anything that offers comfort, hope, or a sense of control. Money, with all its unpredictability, creates the perfect environment for such beliefs to flourish. When markets collapse or fortunes vanish, rational analysis often gives way to emotional survival. Investors may chase conspiracy theories, trust unreliable gurus, or adopt magical thinking about quick fixes and guaranteed returns. Housel explains that this isn't because people are foolish, it's because fear and anxiety short-circuit our ability to think clearly. In desperate times, the brain values comfort over accuracy. He also highlights how stories shape financial behavior. A persuasive narrative can be more powerful than raw data, especially when uncertainty is high. This is why bubbles and manias occur. People believe in a story of endless growth even when evidence suggests otherwise. Likewise, during downturns, overly negative stories spread, convincing people that recovery is impossible even though history proves otherwise. The deeper message is that we are all storytellers when it comes to money. Our beliefs are not strictly rational. They are emotional, cultural, and personal. Recognizing this tendency helps us guard against being swept away by extreme optimism or crushing pessimism. Housel ends the book with a call for humility. No one is immune to bias or belief-driven mistakes. The best protection is to remain skeptical of certainty, especially when it sounds too good or too terrifying to be true. By grounding ourselves in history, flexibility, and patience, we can avoid falling into the trap of believing anything that simply feels convenient in the moment. Conclusion. The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel is not just a book about finance. It is a reflection on human nature. Through its chapters, we learned that wealth is not simply a product of intelligence or education, but of behavior, humility, patience, and the ability to manage our emotions. Housel reminded us that money is deeply personal, shaped by our unique experiences, and that the key to financial success is not chasing perfection, but cultivating resilience and adaptability. From understanding the hidden costs of wealth to recognizing the power of optimism over pessimism, and learning to respect the fact that our goals and desires will inevitably change, the book teaches us that true financial wisdom lies not in predicting the future, but in preparing to thrive within its uncertainty. As we close this journey, let's carry with us the timeless lesson that money is a tool, a means to live a life aligned with our values, rather than an end in itself. Wealth, at its best, is freedom. Freedom to choose, to adapt, and to live without fear. If you found this summary insightful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with friends who might benefit from these powerful lessons. Your support helps us bring more meaningful book summaries and ideas to light.